I didn't know what he had said to Einstein, because I had assumed that because he was kind of a dick, is that he actually did piss Einstein off, like, nice hair, asshole, E equals MC, fuck you, But the fact that, like, Einstein just laid out all this, like, really philosophical kind of, stuff about how they're going to use you to, like, forgive themselves.
Yeah.
Because they did it to me. This really started with me, old Albie Einstein.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, I thought that was impactful.
Yeah, I thought it was one of the cleanest structures of a beginning and ending of a movie.
Oh, goody, goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Brian, John, and Elaine.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I am your host, Brian Coddington, joined by my fellow co-host and filmmaker, John Woolscroft.
I'm feeling gross, Brian.
You're feeling gross?
I'm feeling gross. I can't imagine why.
Could it be because we are actually filming in person again?
Yes. Yeah, at Gross Fest. Well,
Gross
I
Fest.
think that's partially why, but I think it's also that I've eaten way too much candy today.
I want candy, bubblegum, and taffy. And a bellyache.
And so, yeah, as Brian mentioned, we are live at a horror convention here in Pittsburgh. So if you're wondering where all that delightful background noise that you're hearing is coming from.
Listen, here's the thing, man. I'm telling you right now, because I'm listening to this all in headphones, it's not as bad.
Oh.
It is not as bad because we're up on the mic, right? So like we're doing what we need to do.
Yeah.
Okay, from and this is coming from like from someone who works in the podcast industry.
Yeah.
Okay, we are right on the mic.
Yeah.
All right, we're using dynamic mics. So it sounds good. Yeah. And what's hilarious is that this week's episode has nothing really to do with horror. Even though, I mean, existential dread.
Yeah, I mean, what was created in this movie and in reality, since it's based on true events, is pretty horrific.
Yes. Yes, I would agree so. And that is, of course, we're talking this week about Oppenheimer.
A movie about, checks notes, Oppenheimer. Yeah.
Checks notes, because we don't have notes, because we're doing this live. We're doing this at the convention.
Screw it, we'll do it live.
Yeah. But no, Oppenheimer, a movie, the part 2, if you will, of the Barbenheimer phenomenon that has kind of saved cinema.
Yeah,
more or less.
This and Barbie.
This and Barbie pretty much saved cinema.
Yeah, suck it, Tom Cruise. No one cared about your stupid Mission Impossible movie.
To be fair, it did fairly well. It wasn't bad. I was just like, when you come out right before Barbie and Oppenheimer, you're going to kind of, lose steam real easily.
Well, he apparently threw a fit because the number of theaters he did not think was sufficient enough because they needed to clear out for Barbie and Oppenheimer.
That's such a Tom Cruise thing to do.
Yeah. All 5 foot of him just stomping around his house, all upset,
He's not stomping on, he's running.
Yes.
I think that man...
His graceful, beautiful strides.
I think that man quite literally... He runs to the bathroom, runs to the kitchen, he just runs everywhere. And he does it in probably the most ridiculous way, with the hands going up and down.
Oh, yeah, he's like the T-1000.
He does the T-1000. That's literally what... And like when I watched the trailer for Dead Reckoning Part 1, and I'm just like watching him run, I'm like, he's doing the T-1000 thing. Yeah. But apparently that movie did okay. It wasn't... I heard the reviews were half decent. We didn't review it, but
yeah. Brian and I don't really care about the Mission Impossible movies.
It's not that I don't care. It's just I got nothing on it now. I don't care anymore. It's just like once you get past like what are we up to, like Mission Impossible 8?
32, I think.
Okay, well 32. You threw out a number. Yeah. But like once you get past like 3 or 4, that's where it's just like.
Okay, I get it.
I get it. You're Ethan Hunt, and the Mission's Impossible. But this movie instead, along with Barbie, pretty much stole the summer. And I don't think anyone really anticipated that this would be the movie that like everyone flocks to, a movie about the nuclear bomb.
I think it's because the main reason is it's a Christopher Nolan movie.
Yeah.
And that guy still puts butts in seats, even after Tenet not only sucking, but him also forcing everybody during a pandemic to go to a movie theater because he couldn't imagine people watching stuff at home.
Why would you want to watch his IMAX movie at home ever? Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the middle of a pandemic, it might be nice not to risk our lives to watch his incoherent Tenet mess.
You mean that? Well, you know what would be great is if you hear people say like, "Oh, well, you know the mumbling in Tenet, you would have heard all of that in the theater."
Tenet. But, Brian, I can't remember what you said earlier because we were talking on the way here to Gross Fest. I preferred Oppenheimer, but I liked both Barbie and Oppenheimer very much, but I preferred it. And, as you had mentioned, that's probably because we're dudes that we maybe preferred Oppenheimer. Did you prefer it as well? It's so weird to compare the two.
It's you can't really compare it. I don't think it's comparable. But what I think is for me personally, I love both of them for two different reasons. Okay, like I like if I'm looking for a movie that isn't based on a property, that is fairly an original story, right? Which hard to believe, hard to find nowadays.
What?
But hard to find and I mean nowadays, I mean like it's hard to find that in your local cinema. A movie not based on a property, not based on a superhero, that isn't a sequel, that isn't a trilogy, that's none of that. That doesn't have its own fucking universe, okay? Like that is hard to find nowadays. But for me, who wants that sort of thing, it was nice to see that for once. To go to the cinema, to watch something that, I don't know, is a movie made for adults.
Yes.
Because that's the thing. Imagine that. A movie that isn't made to sell toys. Although, I don't know, do they want to sell a little boy and fat man toy? Maybe not. Yeah. So, like, it was nice to see a movie that was geared towards adults, that told a story, that sort of thing. It was nice to see that. But on the other side, Barbie, and we mentioned this last week when we talked about Barbie. Barbie is a movie that isn't made for us. It's not made for dudes.
Yeah.
Dudes
can enjoy it, but it's not. It's not.
I said that's the reason why that particular movie worked so well is because it knew who its audience was. It really was. But it also talked to issues that can transcend that audience.
Yeah.
But its primary audience were for women. I said that last week, and it's true this week. Oppenheimer tells a very different story. It tells a story more or less about us, and I mean us as in America, and kind of our role in World War II. And it brings up a lot of questions because it makes you think. Yeah. Which, how many movies have you seen, John, that have really made you think in the past couple years?
I appreciated that there were multiple shades of gray with John Robert Oppenheimer.
Yes.
The movie didn't just completely villainize him, didn't canonize him either.
No, it didn't.
It showed him with all of his faults and discussed all the faults of building a giant death firebomb from the sky.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, that, again, these movies were paired together just out of the ha-ha of them coming out the same weekend.
Yeah.
But Barbie is about women who can make life, and then you got a movie about Oppenheimer, all men can create is death. And the movie is just 3 hours of how men create death.
And doom and gloom.
Yeah.
And horror. But no, in terms of my enjoyment level, I probably had more enjoyment out of Barbie.
Oh, yeah. I could go see Barbie again tomorrow. I need about 6 months before I see Oppenheimer.
You know what Oppenheimer is like? Oppenheimer is a Requiem for a Dream movie.
Yeah.
I've said this a couple times, that like the Requiem for a Dream, and those of you out there who love that movie, one, are you sadists? Two, Requiem for a Dream is one of those movies that I can only watch every 10 years. Like it's one where it's just like, do I want to check if I'm still human and still can empathize? Well, I might as well watch this movie of 4 or 5 people's dealing with drug abuse.
Brian, I find it actually soothing to watch that woman clean her house. I'm like, look at that bitch vacuum. She's got a spotless house,
She's on uppers, but she's got a spotless house. But my point is just like, with Oppenheimer, I don't think people are going to be like, oh, what's the replay value of Oppenheimer? It's a 3-hour-long slog of a movie.
Yeah.
And there have been some people who have said, like, this type of movie is you can't turn your brain off. And I think that does speak something to kind of us as cinema goers nowadays, where we're so used to movies where you do have to turn your brain off to really get enjoyment. How many times have we, seen a Marvel film and like you and I have picked pieces out of it, but at the same time we're like, is this because like we aren't like everybody else who can just like shut that part of our brain off for 2 hours straight?
Laser and sky, woo!
Yeah. You know what I mean? So this is not a movie that you can really do that. You really do have to be paying attention, and on top of that, just have an interest in this sort of stuff.
That's a big thing with this movie too, is that like it's a slog at 3 hours anyways, but I do believe that you have to be a history buff and you have to know a little bit going into it. Nolan is very good at guiding you through this movie, but there's a lot that if you're not aware of it to begin with.
Yeah.
I
think that's fair.
And I just like being a history buff and knowing a lot about, the creation of the atomic bomb. Like I was super pumped for this, but I could imagine a lot of people who don't really care that much about history or don't know anything about this be like, I don't know, I don't really give a crap, or I don't know what these people are doing.
Yeah. Now, what was the theater like when you went to go see it?
It was very quiet and respectful. There were a couple dudes in suits,
dudes in suits.
Yeah, because and then I went to the Barbie movie a few days later, and there were everybody in like pink and stuff. You know. So it was like there were a couple of people who I guess they wanted to dress up like Robert Oppenheimer, and then I don't know, maybe they went to the bathroom and changed into pink and went to Barbie. I don't know.
So if they wanted to dress like Oppenheimer, did they wear like big floppy hats?
Somebody did have a hat, and I'm like, so glad I'm not sitting behind that person. They're bleacher seatings now, so it would be fine.
Yeah.
But.
Now when I saw it, my wife and I saw it, and it wasn't a jam-packed theater. Mainly probably because it was like a Tuesday night, and it was a Tuesday night, and it was at a theater that was not like a big. We didn't go to Waterfront to go see it. We just wanted to pick one that was close to us, and there were a lot of old people there. Like that was the big thing. There were just a lot of elderly people there, and I found it fascinating. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
And I don't want to be like the asshole who goes like, oh, well, it was because back in their day. When I'm like, honestly, probably not. Like they weren't like great grandma age. They were just like,
but there
older.
were people that lived through the Cold War, and this is the beginning of what ended up causing the Cold War.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you look at it that way, you're not wrong there. Yeah. But there were still some younger people there. But it was an audience that was vastly different from the Barbie audience.
Yeah,
I didn't see anyone wearing "I love Nuke" shirts.
Nuke the whales, man.
Nuke the whales. No. But so this movie is, and this is something that I think you can either love it or hate it. This movie does not let up.
No.
At any point.
Now, a lot of that is that the music never stops. And I felt that a lot of the movie kind of felt either like a music video or a never-ending trailer. Because it's just like quick dialogue and it's people sitting in a boardroom, but the music. And I think that like he's compensating for the fact that some of this could be kind of dry. So it's like the music is just gonna like kick you in the face the entire time.
I've noticed that Nolan does that with all of his movies.
Oh yeah, that is a Nolan.
That's a Nolan trope. Yeah. Is that he does not. He really is a fan of that music accompanying every scene.
And he hates ADR.
He hates ADR.
So yeah, he's got his music blasted up and it's like, Oppenheimer build a bomb. I'm like, what? It's not as bad as Tenet was.
No, Tenet was much worse. And he must have obviously learned some lessons from Tenet that he applied to this. Although I have heard people say that this is probably his most Christopher Nolan movie. That has all of the tropes of a Christopher Nolan film.
Which is interesting because this is like one of his first divergence from fantastical, whether it's superheroes or magicians or
not really, because didn't he do the World War? Wasn't it the World
Dunkirk?
War?
Yeah,
Dunkirk.
This falls more of like I guess he's maturing. This is his Dunkirk era.
Yes, this is his post Dunkirk.
Yeah,
but the music I actually really liked, but I felt that it was way too loud at points.
Yeah.
and the sound design alone was way too loud at points. And that might have also just been my theater that I was at, but like I know my wife said like I could barely hear half the shit because it was the sound design just was not as good. And maybe that was because we didn't go to an IMAX theater.
Yeah.
Which that's a whole
Which
other
there
thing
aren't
there.
many.
True IMAX, there are not many.
Yeah.
Like it was funny. I was mentioning that to someone at work. I was like, yeah, we're can't really find an IMAX, and they're like, well, what about the Science Center? So in Pittsburgh, we have a Science Center that has a IMAX projector. Problem is, they're not playing movies like this there. They're playing like Whale or
nature
Dolphins.
documentaries. Yeah,
They're not playing a movie like Oppenheimer there. Although maybe they should. But to really go experience this movie, you had to go to an IMAX theater that had the best sound and best picture. That's hard to accomplish.
Yeah.
So like the vast majority of us saw it in a regular fucking theater, that maybe isn't as outputted perfectly.
And Brian, can we get a little bogged down in the technical weeds?
Sure, absolutely.
Is that for people that don't know, when he's shooting in IMAX, it's only a certain percentage of the movie, like 20% or less, and that's a completely different aspect ratio.
Well, in this movie, he
film.
shot the whole thing in IMAX.
I don't know. I don't believe.
I think he did.
I'll have to look that up.
He's done that in a couple other ones, like Dark Knight. There were scenes in the Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises that were shot with IMAX cameras.
And I hate that because the aspect ratio changes, which is for people that might not know, that's just like the size of the screen or how it's presented, how you see it on the screen, whether in a movie theater or at home, and that takes me out of seeing the movie if the aspect ratio is changing.
Yes, I hate that.
So, I mean, I know he likes to play with his little toys, and Christopher Nolan incorrectly thinks that people come to the movies for zip, wow, bam, pow instead of story. He's said that in a much more intelligent way than I just did. But yeah, I don't know. That drives me a little nuts when it's like, oh, now it's an IMAX format,
I mean, I think this one may have been filmed entirely with IMAX cameras. Like that's why there was such the push that you see this movie in IMAX, because it's entirely filmed with IMAX cameras. And there's something to that. One, it does make these things more of a spectacle rather than just you're going to the movies. And that's really what Nolan was trying to do with this one, is to make it more of a spectacle.
Yeah.
Which that's great,
But, I feel that there are all kinds of different films. I don't think it's just one of those, like, you have to have a gimmick, like, you have to come see this in the movie theater. Even though I will say I never saw Avatar 2 in the theater, and now there's on Disney+. But if I didn't see it in the movie theater, I'm certainly not watching it on my laptop.
But Avatar 2, I don't think, tried to push the spectacle aspect of it as hard.
But if you don't see that in a theater, what's the point of seeing it anywhere else?
Well, you might just be a fan of the Navi. You might be a fan of a camera night, if you will. That's a good one there, camera night. Yeah. But no, I think there's something to the spectacle aspect, because really, cinema hasn't had a thing that I think drives people to the theater in recent years, since the IMAX
Endgame.
Endgame, yes,
that was like the cinematic.
But that wasn't. That was not. You weren't really saying I have to go to a specified theater,
right? A
to
specific
watch
type of
that.
theater. Yeah.
It was more or less, I need to get to the theater to see this movie because it's 20 years in the making.
Yeah.
Right. Or 10 years in the making at that point. So that's a different type of spectacle. This is, you've got Nolan basically saying, this is a movie about the atomic bomb. It's 3 hours long. It's got all these fantastic actors in this. Like, Oppenheimer has a murderer's row of amazing actors in this.
Yeah,
even
like
from
big
bit
name
parts.
stars and like stars, movie stars you haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah.
Or and actors that I didn't think could act at all are actually impressive. And it's like Josh Hartnett.
Well, Josh Hartnett, Drake Bell.
Yeah.
All these people that you're like, holy crap, they can fucking act,
Yeah.
And it's the story also done in a very serious, not crazy stylized way. Like
it's done very smart because it's kind of narratively all over the place, but that's to its credit.
That's a Nolan
it
thing
jumps
too.
back and forth, and that's the only way kind of really to tell the story. of, okay, now let's fill that in, let's fill this gap in, but also to keep the audience interested. If it was like completely linear, I think it would have lost the audience, especially at like 3 hours.
Yeah.
Now, I know you disagree with me on this,
Okay.
but I think that the movie was way too long, not in the sense that I was bored by it, but I thought that there was so much that could have been left out. I think this movie could have left 30 minutes on the cutting room floor. And I'll have one huge example. And I know she's in it because it's historically accurate, but I think you could cut out Florence Pugh's character completely, and I don't think it would change anything from the movie.
Oh, it would absolutely change shit for the movie. You have to understand, and I understand why she's in it.
Yeah.
Florence Pugh's character of Jean Tatlock, she is basically someone who ultimately ended up being the downfall for Oppenheimer. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole thing. That's the arc of this character, is that his past relationship with Tatlock and the fact that she was a communist, the fact that she, and even Oppenheimer says, like, I wasn't really into the whole Communist Party thing. Everybody back then, was. That's kind of what you did. Yeah.
It was really just an excuse to get together and get drunk and fuck.
Basically. I mean, that's it. And he even, comes across as like, yeah, I, basically was just trying to get in her pants. Yeah. So, yeah. But the point is that, if you cut her character out, you're really cutting out that aspect that ultimately hurt his career further down the line. And that's, I think, kind of the big crux of this movie, is that this movie is not just about how he made the atomic bomb. It's how one man basically spearheaded that operation, basically won the war for America when it came to the Japanese. At least that's the propaganda we're given. Arguably. That's the propaganda.
I don't think we should have ever dropped the atomic bomb. I think
Neither
the
do
war
I.
was over. I think that's just the idea is when they build a machine, they want to make sure it works.
Yes.
So they just use human guinea pigs.
Well, let's be honest here. At that point, it was more or less like, how can I, tell the Russians to F off?
Yeah.
Which is, so we have to prove that we have a weapon.
Mm.
So, sorry. But the point is, I'm trying to get across is that this man develops this weapon, becomes face of Time Life. He's like Mr. Scientist. He's got so much prestige at that point. But how does that person's past come back to affect them? And how can it be used against them in a political arena, which is ultimately what happened? How can someone who's like, I got the genie out of the bottle, end up being used by his own government and then thrown away over his past transgressions? Which, let's be honest here, his past transgressions are bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
And it's even the movie, it's basically spells that out.
Because Robert Downey Jr. basically plays the antagonist for, I don't know if this movie has
Louis
one.
Strauss.
Yeah. Who was trying to be confirmed. But it ends up, we find out through the story that Oppenheimer embarrassed him multiple times. Well, and he was just like, I'm going to screw him.
Well, it makes Louis Strauss sound like a petty asshole.
Yeah.
Because the movie starts off their relationship of appreciation, but because of one diss that's imagined, that leads a domino effect of basically vendetta against Oppenheimer that culminates in him basically trying to get this guy ousted from government, which it worked,
Yeah. And one big complaint I would have about the way that this movie is structured is that I think so much of what's fascinating about his story, Oppenheimer, pronouns, pal, that what happened when he delivered the bomb to the United States Army and they went, all right, thanks a lot, idiot, we'll take it from here, and how the government screwed everything up in their creation of super weapons, and then that leaked to the Russians, and then before you know it, the world is at this stranglehold of who's gonna drop the bomb first, that kind of butter battle book Dr. Seuss, who's gonna drop it off the mountain first. But I think that was just rushed, and I'm like, I feel there was some stuff earlier, I'm like, could we focus a little more on that? Because I feel that it was another one of those Christopher Nolan music videos of fact, song, and it's like, can we see more of that? I don't know.
I get that. My biggest complaint when it comes to that of speeding through stuff is I felt we did not get enough of the destruction that weapon unleashed.
Oh yeah, they didn't have the balls to go there.
They did not have the balls to go there.
Yeah.
And I think it does a disservice to the Japanese people. It does a disservice to their memory and just everything that has unleashed that we do not show that. Now, the one moment I will say in this movie that was my absolute favorite, and it was when they did have the balls to do something, is the scene where Oppenheimer is addressing the people of Los Alamos after the bomb has been dropped, and he's in a gym, and they're all rah America.
Yeah.
And he's got this bizarre vision of what it's actually unleashed. And the acting in it from everybody in that room is like going back and forth between rah America to screaming in abject horror.
Yeah.
As if the bomb was going off. And you've got burnt bodies on the ground. And I'm like, this is the most holy shit moment in the movie.
It's a waking nightmare.
That actually shows what this bomb did.
Yeah.
And it's my, I hate to say it, my favorite part of the movie, but it's the moment of the movie that just, you're on the edge of your seat and you forget you're watching a movie at that point. At least for me, that was the case. I don't know about you, but I literally was on my edge of a seat going, whoa.
Well, my favorite scene is when they were boning over Sanskrit. No, but no,
Yeah.
I agree with you. That was, I think, one of the most impactful scenes in the movie.
And I wish that there may have been more of that. I wish that we did see that. That's not to say that I want to see that. I'm just saying that for a movie that is about the horrors of the atomic bomb and the horrors that it has left on our society at large, to not see what it did is lacking.
The one thing that I may say in his defense, or at least what I think Christopher Nolan would say, is that we have 2 points of view of this movie. This movie isn't it's not really third what's the word I'm looking for? Third party storytelling. It's from Oppenheimer's point of view and Strauss's point of view. That's why Oppenheimer's stuff is in color and Strauss's stuff is in black and white.
Yes.
Is that Oppenheimer really wouldn't have seen what happened when the bomb had dropped. He'll only hear about it. So possibly it could be said that since they wouldn't have experienced it hands-on and only heard about it after the fact, when they're not going to hear so many Japanese people died, they're going to say, we won the war, that, maybe it would be kind of breaking out of that way of storytelling.
I think, though, it's important to have that point, though.
Yeah.
Even if it's like you did it in a dream sequence. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I can imagine you doing a sequence where it is taken out of that first-person perspective that you get through the entire movie. But maybe at this point, this is a point where it is more of like a dream sequence in Oppenheimer's head that he wakes up for. And it's not really a dream. It's because he's reading that, he got a telegram saying the bomb's been bopped in Hiroshima, So, like, that's what I'm getting across, is that when we don't see that, it kind of deadens the impact. Like, here's one example. Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
Yeah.
Okay? The scene that everyone remembers from that movie in the beginning is what?
Linda Hamilton being ripped apart.
Yes,
Yeah.
It is that scene. It is Judgment
All the
Day
buildings
occurring.
being blown off.
All the buildings being blown up. Linda Hamilton being ripped apart. All that
Miniature
stuff.
buses being
Yes.
knocked over.
Well, it's the horror of atomic war.
Yeah.
And that is what I'm saying that this movie is missing, is we don't see that except for those little bits and pieces of that waking nightmare that he has in the gym scene. Aside from that, it is all, this is us building the bomb, this is us after the bomb. We never see what that thing unleashed. And, we do have like the Trinity test. Great. But it's very stylized. It's a stylistic type of thing. It's not an accurate portrayal of the Trinity test. It's a stylistic. Now, we haven't yet talked about the VFX of this thing, but
they're good. Spoiler alert. They're pretty good.
And they're practical.
Yeah.
That's the
because
crazy
Christopher
thing.
Nolan will never do it any other way. Like, take that, studio.
Well,
give me all the money.
he did do comp stuff. He did do some comp stuff, but like, there's no crazy CGI in this. This is all done practically, which no one does that anymore. The Trinity tests were all done with explosions, or they were done in a stylistic way using like cloud tanks and other sorts of crazy things that we haven't, filmmakers haven't done in decades.
Yeah.
Because
well, it's a lot cheaper to flip an 18-wheeler in a computer than it is to like do a real one in the Dark Knight. The studio was probably like, "You want a real 18-wheeler, Chris?"
Like, yes, I want a real 18-wheeler.
Oh, yes, I do. Yeah, but I think partially one of the reasons that we didn't see more of the repercussions of it the way we did in, like, say, Terminator 2 is that Christopher Nolan is such an analytical filmmaker.
Yeah,
I don't think he puts a lot of emotion into his movies.
I mean,
he's very robotic.
He is very robotic.
Yeah.
And that's great, but I really think this movie was missing that. Me coming away from it like having kind of this discussion in my head of what that the idea of creating and dropping the atomic bomb was a very gray area of thinking. And that to say that all of them are evil or all of them are good is not the correct way of thinking about this.
Yeah.
That it is very much a morally gray area. And to have that conversation in your head after this movie is great, but it is missing that emotional point that maybe would have been great to have in.
Yeah. And I mean, the very ending of it, and I'm assuming you've seen this movie.
Well, I hope you've seen the movie.
Is that he says in an attempt to save the world, like he basically possibly brought an end to it.
Well, I got to tell you, I want to ask you this. What was your thought on the structure of that beginning and ending?
I didn't mind it. I thought I didn't know what he had said to Einstein, because I had assumed that because he was kind of a dick, is that he actually did piss Einstein off, like, nice hair, asshole, E equals MC, fuck you, But the fact that, like, Einstein just laid out all this, like, really philosophical kind of, stuff about how they're going to use you to, like, forgive themselves.
Yeah.
Because they did it to me. This really started with me, old Albie Einstein.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, I thought that was impactful.
Yeah, I thought it was one of the cleanest structures of a beginning and ending of a movie. Like that, and you rarely see that nowadays, where something that starts off in the beginning of the film, and again, this is a 3-hour-long movie, so we're not that far in when we first see that conversation with Einstein. And we know one perspective of it, right? And we're going through the whole movie thinking that one perspective is correct. And then it isn't until the end of the movie where we revisit that conversation, we realize that from the perspective of Oppenheimer and Einstein, that it really was about what did you just unleash? And it has this brilliant fucking line where, Oppenheimer's like, I gave you these calculations, and there was a chance that we could have destroyed the whole world based off of those calculations.
Yeah.
And he's, Einstein's like, yeah, I remember that. That made sense to me. And Oppenheimer says, I think we actually did.
Yeah.
And I love that. From someone who's coming at it from a story perspective, I love that because there's so many callbacks. It cuts to multiple layers of what this movie is about, and ultimately just illustrates that they kind of did. They kind of unleashed not necessarily a explosion across the entire globe from one bomb, but an explosion across the entire world from a future where everybody develops these weapons and finds it necessary to use them for whatever political ends. And that's the thing that I loved about this movie, is how it wrapped around that in that opener and closer.
Yeah. And, and that just creates such a, conversation starter, rather. At the end of the movie, it's like, was it the right thing to do? Because, like, what if they did nothing and the Germans had developed it? And, so it's like, who's going to destroy the world first? And who hubba, money, who can you trust?
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing, is there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
It's more or less like, because obviously Oppenheimer developed these things thinking he was going to use it against the Nazis and use it against fascism. But then it ends up becoming like, well, we kind of defeated fascism, so now we just got to deal with Japan, and they quote unquote aren't gonna surrender. Spoiler alert: modern history tells us they actually were ready to.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like look at there's a great documentary, The Fog of War, where Robert McNamara lays out that like, yeah, they were about to surrender. They had nothing left.
Right.
You know. But they're like, no, let's drop our bombs like once.
Because it was no longer about it wasn't about World War II anymore. It was about
the Cold War.
The Cold War. That is 100% what it was about.
Begun. The Cold War has.
Way to take horribleness and make it funny. But yeah, I mean, that sort of conversation you have when you leave this movie is important to have. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the different characters in this. Florence Pugh's character. We talked earlier, said like you don't really need her.
I'm not taking anything away from her performance. She's great as always.
Yes.
I was just saying that like narratively, I thought she could have been left out. But no, I thought she did very well.
No, she did great.
Yeah.
Of course, the big thing about this was her nude scenes, and okay, good job.
Yeah.
I did find it. I gotta say this: the scene that I thought like you could cut this out, and I mentioned this in the car, is the scene where they're both like sitting naked in like the den, out like the hotel room.
Yeah,
and they're having a conversation, and I'm just like, this is so unrealistic and just weird.
Yeah,
like no one does that ever.
Pillow talk.
No, not even pillow talk. Like
Yeah.
just like. She's sitting naked, he's sitting naked in two chairs. You know, he's cross-legged, and I'm just like, this is so weird.
Well, it's like Florence has to show her whole body, but Cillian wants to tuck those beans and mash in, you know. Well, I don't want them seeing my wiener.
But funny enough, I've heard that copies of that of her in those films, they've been kind of like censored. Like copies of it have been sent to some theaters, have been censored because of it. But I just felt like that scene wasn't necessary, and it was kind of just like, you know, the show nudity for nudity's sake.
Hey, you don't have to tell me, Brian. I felt every scene with her was not necessary, so I'm with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like what the hell is Emily Blunt? I was
Emily Blunt
going
was
to call her
great.
Mary Poppins, but she was great. But I thought her character was just too inconsistent. It's like she's at one point in the movie, she's like, "I hate you. I hate this house. I hate the baby. I hate my life. I'm a drunken mess. Like I wish everyone would die, including me." And then by the end of the movie, she's like, "Oppie, you gotta fight for your right to party." You know, she's like standing by his side. I'm like,
well,
you were shitting on him for most of this movie.
To be fair, he cuts through this movie through time very fast.
Yeah.
So like you're getting this person at different time periods.
I didn't think it ever earned it, and I don't think we ever saw the change where she went from suck my balls, suck my lady balls to I'll stand by you no matter what.
True.
Yeah.
True. And again, that's because this movie doesn't give us some time for that.
Yeah.
It doesn't give us some character
But that's an
development time.
insane thing to say, isn't it? This movie's 3 hours and it doesn't have enough time.
Because there's a lot.
Yeah.
Like you're literally spanning what, 4 decades
Yeah.
over the course of 3 hours. Yeah. So like there's a lot there. I love the scene with Emily Blunt where she's in the interrogation room with like, you know, Oppenheimer, and they're trying their hardest to like crack her.
Yeah.
Because she, you know, at one time
Wish.com John Connor.
Yeah, Wish.com John Connor trying to crack Emily Blunt, and it's like not working. Her comeback to his, and you know, like that's her scene.
Yeah.
Like she's like, this is me. This is my scene. I'm going to show you exactly who this character is. And she nails it. Nails it. Like I was on yes.
Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr. What'd you think of his role in this?
I thought he was fantastic. Like, I hate to say this because he was great as a character, and he made $1 billion.
You mean Iron Man?
I'm getting there. Yeah, and he was like basically a Beatle for a long time. But I think Iron Man and those movies kept him from taking more sophisticated roles that really shows his range. And I'm glad.
Oh, come on. You don't mean Dr. Dolittle was not more of his range?
But I'm glad that now he has the opportunity to do movies like this. And it's funny, from all the hoopla, Barbenheimer, I do think 2 of the people that are going to be nominated for Best Supporting Actor are Robert Downey Jr. and Ryan Gosling.
I agree.
They'll be 2 of the 5.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's, you know what's funny is playing villains. There's a couple different tactics you could place with that.
Yeah.
Right? Like you could totally go for the mustache twirler. You could go for the subdued monster.
Yeah.
Or you can find somewhere in between. But, Robert Downey Jr., he comes at Louis Strauss, who is clearly the villain in this movie.
Yeah. I didn't realize that at first.
No,
I thought he was just a vessel to help tell the story.
Yeah. And he even is presented as like, I was Oppenheimer's buddy. I was like his greatest fan. But then you start to see the cracks start to form. Right? Like you start, and it's a slow reveal of how much this man fucking hated Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Like, fuck. And it's over petty shit. Just petty shit. He hated the fact he was independently wealthy, before he didn't have to, make money as a businessman, whereas Strauss literally did have to do that. Oppenheimer came from a family of wealth. On top of that, went to the best schools, came in highly educated, became the physicist in charge of Los Alamos. Strauss is literally a self-made man. So there's two complete dichotomies there. On top of that, it's literally one incident that causes this man to say, "I fucking hate this guy. I'm going to be."
Well, there was also the Senate hearing with Oppenheimer too, and for some reason he shows that like 17 times in the movie. Like, okay, Christopher Nolan, we got it, we remember. But and I think it's a lot of that whole. You may be a genius scientist, but you're also just that kooky weirdo, and I'm the man with power. You work for me. It reminds me of, to use another Christopher Nolan movie, not as good, Dark Knight Rises, when, what was the name of the guy who was basically using Bane?
Oh, Daggett.
Daggett, yeah. He's like, you might be this big bad guy, but I'm really in charge. I'm rich, I'm powerful, you work for me. And then Bane just like rips his face off or something.
When we don't see it, but he basically rips his face off. But no, I thought that in terms of playing a villain that was subdued, but at the same time, like clearly Machiavellian and willing to manipulate the wheels of power to his ends, Robert Downey Jr. knocked out the park. And I really do believe that it will be up against, Gosling and him for best supporting actor. My money's on Gosling, personally. If he doesn't win best song, with I'm Just Ken, I don't know what will. But yeah, I mean, the moments he's on screen are really, really good.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I would highly recommend it to anybody to go see. If you're not a big history buff and you don't like long movies, maybe sit it out. Maybe this isn't for you.
I mean,
but
when we left the theater, my wife didn't like it. She didn't like it at all. And her response was honestly a very honest response, and I understood why she said. She said it was too long. And on top of that, it was glorifying horrible people who developed the atomic bomb. She's not wrong. I don't think it glorifies
I think it's a hint
them.
more complicated than
I think it's
that.
more complicated. I try to express them like there's a lot of nuance to this thing. It is I view it as more of a sad film than anything.
Yeah.
And I've said already before, early in this episode, that it does miss moments to show the horror in its actual full reality. But I think it paints a very complex picture of a man who thought he was doing the right thing. Oppenheimer thought he was defending the U.S. and the world against fascism. He didn't know that his government kind of was going to fuck him over.
But, I could see what Lorna's saying in the sense that if you make a movie about him, and this is not even apples to oranges, this is like apples to rusty nails.
Yeah.
Like, you look at like the Jeffrey Dahmer miniseries that Netflix did.
Yeah.
Even if you're showing him as a monster by the fact that the movie is about him, or that in that sense a streaming show about him, you are glorifying him, even if not intended. As I said, and I want to repeat, I'm not comparing Jeffrey Dahmer to Robert Oppenheimer or vice versa.
No.
But I'm saying that, like, you are, in a sense, glorifying the people that built the atomic bomb, even if that wasn't your intention, by giving them this 3-hour movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that gets into film theory. That gets into like a lot of deep weeds.
It does. I also want to point out that Robert Oppenheimer never said that he regretted the atomic bomb. That's a point of historical fact. He never said that he would not use the bomb now. And this movie does a good job of explaining this, that his actions and what he did post-war clearly show a man who regrets a lot, that understands what his creation and the creation of people who worked in his lab did. Yeah. And I think that proliferation of that weapon is the problem. And I think naively he thought like, oh yeah, if I show this, if this weapon's being used and people actually see it, they'll realize that, oh yeah, we probably shouldn't do this ever again. And I think the sad part of this movie is that that is not the case. Yeah. That we're very much living in a world where it's who has the bigger gun and who can fire it quicker.
Well, not that I'm even suggesting we should, but that's one of the reasons we could never help Ukraine against Russia, because Russia's got nukes, we got nukes. It's the end of the fucking world.
Yeah, that's we're still living with it. That's the thing, is what happens in this movie, what's depicted in this movie, we are still living with the repercussions of. Everybody has literally a nuclear handgun pointed at their head. So it's the movie itself is, I thought, really, really good. And it's also very depressing. You will come out of this thinking like, oh God, what type of world do I live in where this sort of thing can happen? And that we're still living with. So,
and I think the biggest point to take away from it is, I think it was Bertrand Russell that said, why even try to get rid of every nuclear weapon before you get rid of the idea that we need them in the first place?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's 100%. And I think even Oppenheimer says in the movie, he's like, for us to even consider building the bomb is going to proliferate building of the bomb.
Yeah.
Like, that's why he was against the H-bomb. Because if we build an H-bomb, the next country is going to build an H-bomb. And if we build something bigger than that, the other country is going to build something bigger than that. So it never ends until we're all dead.
And they'll build a bigger board with a stick nail in it, and a bigger board until they destroy themselves.
So it's a downer of an episode, is what we're saying.
Well, it's a downer of a movie.
It's a downer of a movie. But
you know what? Brian, put underneath all that like Hans Zimmer music while we're talking and stuff, and be like, yeah, this is good.
There you
this
go.
is fun.
There you go. Well then, I mean, that's that. We had to do Oppenheimer because of Barbenheimer. So like, this was a required thing. But John, where can they find you at on the internets?
You can find me over at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, like personally. Brian, you'll go over all the stuff we have for the show, but also check out J-Dub's Video Nasties. Got a video coming out soon on Dirty Harry, and I know your listeners are probably like, the ones that listen repeatedly, like, how many times are you going to say that episode's coming?
He said it 1,000
but
times.
But it's coming, I swear. It's coming. Because I got to get ready for all the Halloween stuff, too. I'm going to really buckle down for spooky season episodes.
We got a lot of stuff planned.
Yeah.
Planned for spooky season. We also got something special planned for September. Yeah. And should I announce what September is going to be?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so I know we're in August now. And September seems like a long ways away. But we've got a cool idea for September, folks. We are going to do an entire month based around 90s dystopian sci-fi cyberpunk movies.
I think I'm most excited for Lawnmower Man.
Yeah. Okay, here's what's coming. Here's the murderous row of movies we're going to cover. We're going to be covering Virtuosity, my favorite. Okay, we're covering Lawnmower Man. We're covering Hackers, and of course, you can't have a dystopian sci-fi cyberpunk 90s movie without Johnny Mnemonic.
See, Brian, this is why I knew we were going to be friends for life. You're the only other person who remembers Virtuosity.
Virtuosity is fucking amazing, man. Okay. I love that movie. It's Russell Crowe's best film. Aside from Unhinged, it's his best film. Okay?
Another sweet Unhinged
Are you getting
plug.
an idea that maybe I just really love crazy Russell Crowe? I don't really care for the Gladiator version or when he's like, Jor-El in Superman. I don't want that. I want crazy Russell Crowe. And Virtuosity is like his first movie where he's insane. So I'm looking forward to that. But that's going to be all the month of September. So make sure that you follow us now so that you get those episodes. We may have some special guests that are popping in on those particular episodes. Yeah. But aside from that, you can find me at Brian Cunnington on the Twitters. I'm also run our Psycho Show page, so be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Psycho Show. We are also on the TikToks. I got criticized today because I said the TikToks.
The Talkie Ticks.
The Talkie
We
Ticks.
got a couple of cool videos while we're here at Gross Fest. So we'll be throwing.
We did.
Up
We'll
on
throw those
TikTok.
up on the
They
TikToks.
probably already are up on TikTok by the time you're listening to this.
Maybe.
So go watch them for the first time. If you already watched them, go watch them again. It helps the algorithm.
There you
Keep
go.
watching.
Yeah, keep watching them again. Like them again. 1,000 times over. Grab a burner phone. Like it again on there. But my point is we're on TikToks. We also have a Discord channel, so if you want to pop in and you want to talk to us about your views on the movie Oppenheimer or any of our back catalog of films, there's a lot of them there, you can do that. The link for it is in the description of this episode. On top of that, you can also contact us the old-fashioned way on email at cinemapsychoshow.com. Be sure to follow us and like us wherever you get your audio, and we will see you all next time.
How about we actually combine the worlds and Oppenheimer drops a bomb on Barbie world?
Wah, wah.